The last rays of sunset burned across the New Mexico Territory sky as Katherine Zellner watched the final member of her wagon train disappear over the horizon, leaving her alone with a broken axle, two exhausted horses, and the whispers that had haunted her since birth. The year was 1875, and in the unforgiving landscape of the American frontier, being abandoned was as good as a death sentence, especially for a woman they called cursed. "Left-handed devil's child," the wagon master had muttered when no one else was listening, making the sign of the cross as he'd announced they couldn't wait for her repairs. "Best we move on before your bad luck spreads." Katherine stared at her damaged wagon, fighting back tears that threatened to spill from her deep green eyes. At 22, she had already endured more than her share of superstition and cruelty. Born with her left hand dominant in a God-fearing Pennsylvania town, she'd been forced to hide her natural inclination, enduring painful attempts to correct her sinister tendency. When her parents died of influenza last winter, leaving her with nothing but debts and whispers, she'd sold everything to join the westward migration to Santa Fe, and now this. The cooling desert air raised goosebumps on her skin as she assessed her situation. The nearest town was Rattlesnake Gulch, at least 2 days' ride, and that was if she abandoned most of her possessions. Her food would last perhaps a week if she rationed carefully. The water barrel was half full. A coyote howled in the distance, the sound echoing across the empty landscape. Katherine squared her shoulders. She wasn't dead yet. As darkness fell, she lit a lantern and began unloading the wagon, sorting through her meager possessions. She'd need to lighten the load considerably if she hoped to repair the axle enough to limp to town. Setting aside her father's carpentry tools and her mother's Bible, she created a pile of items she could bear to leave behind. The sound of approaching hoofbeats froze her in place. Friend or foe out here, one could become the other in the blink of an eye. Katherine grabbed her father's old revolver, checking that it was loaded before positioning herself behind the wagon. A lone rider emerged from the darkness, silhouetted against the star-strewn sky. The stranger pulled his horse to a stop a respectful distance away. "Hello, the wagon." A deep voice called, "Are you in need of assistance?" Katherine kept the revolver steady. "State your business, stranger." The man dismounted slowly, hands visible. "Name's Aaron Northrup, madam. I was riding to Rattlesnake Gulch when I spotted your light." He stepped closer into the glow of her lantern, revealing a face weathered by sun and wind, with kind eyes the color of a summer sky. Couldn't in good conscience ride past without offering help. The others had no such trouble, Katherine said bitterly. Others. Aaron Northrup looked around, confusion evident on his face. "My wagon train. They left me behind when the axle broke. Said repairs would take too long." She didn't mention the real reason: the whispers, the crossed fingers, the blame that followed her like a shadow. Aaron shook his head, genuine dismay crossing his features. "That ain't right, leaving a woman alone out here." He stepped closer, eyeing the broken axle. "I've got some experience with wagon repairs. Mind if I take a look?" Katherine hesitated, then lowered the revolver. "I'd be obliged." As Aaron examined the damage, she studied him surreptitiously. Tall and broad-shouldered, he moved with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to handling himself in difficult situations. The gun on his hip was worn but well-maintained, and his clothes, though dusty from the trail, were of good quality. "This is fixable," he announced after a thorough inspection. "Got some tools in my saddlebags that'll help. It'll take a few hours, but we can have you rolling by morning." "We?" Katherine asked, eyebrow raised. Aaron's mouth quirked in a smile that softened his rugged features. "I'm heading to Rattlesnake Gulch myself. No sense in traveling separately if we're bound for the same destination." Something unfamiliar fluttered in Katherine's chest, hope, perhaps, or simply relief at not facing the journey alone. "I can pay you for your trouble," she offered. "No need," he replied, already retrieving tools from his saddlebags. "My pa taught me never to leave folks stranded." Besides, he added with a wink, company on the trail is payment enough. They worked side by side through the night, the desert chill kept at bay by their exertions. Aaron proved skilled and efficient, and Katherine matched him in determination, her nimble fingers both right and left helping with the detailed work. "You're good with your hands," Aaron observed as she spliced a length of rope with surprising dexterity. Katherine tensed, waiting for the inevitable comment about her left-handedness, but it never came. Instead, Aaron continued, "My sister could tie knots like that. Taught herself sailmaking of all things before she married a Navy man and moved to California." "Your sister sounds remarkable," Katherine replied, relaxing slightly. "She is. Stubborn as a mule, smart as a whip, and kind-hearted to boot." He paused in his work, looking at Katherine directly. "Reminds me of someone I just met." The compliment warmed her more than it should have. By the time dawn painted the eastern sky with streaks of gold and pink, the axle was repaired and reinforced, the wagon repacked, and Katherine's spirits cautiously lifted. "It'll hold until Rattlesnake Gulch," Aaron declared, wiping his hands on a rag. "From there, you can get a proper replacement." "I don't know how to thank you," Katherine said, meaning it. "No need for thanks, just doing what any decent man would do." He glanced at her with those clear blue eyes. "Though I am curious what brings a woman like you out to this territory alone." Katherine hesitated. Her usual caution warred with a strange desire to confide in this man who had treated her with nothing but respect. "A fresh start," she finally said. "I've inherited a small plot of land near Santa Fe from a distant uncle. Thought I might try my hand at farming." Aaron nodded approvingly. "Good land out that way if you've got water rights. You know anything about farming?" "I grew up on a farm in Pennsylvania. It's different here, I know, but I'm a quick learner." "That you are," he agreed. "Well, let's get moving. We've got a long ride ahead." They traveled together for 2 days, settling into an easy rhythm. Aaron proved to be a companionable travel partner, sharing stories of his years as a ranch hand, cattle driver, and occasionally, when times were lean, a bounty hunter. He never pried into Katherine's past, sensing her reluctance to discuss it, but his natural friendliness gradually wore down her defenses. By the time they reached the outskirts of Rattlesnake Gulch, Katherine found herself laughing more than she had in years, her usual wariness temporarily forgotten. The town itself was typical of frontier settlements, a dusty main street lined with false-fronted buildings, a general store, 2 saloons, a small church, and a collection of houses and businesses in various states of repair. It wasn't much, but after days in the wilderness, it seemed like a metropolis. "Where to first?" Aaron asked as they rolled down the main street, drawing curious glances from the townspeople. "The wagon ride, I suppose," Katherine replied. "Then supplies. I'll need to find a place to stay tonight before continuing on tomorrow." "There's a decent boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Holloway," Aaron suggested. "Clean beds, fair prices, and she doesn't ask too many questions." They parted ways at the wagon rights, Aaron promising to meet her later at the general store to help with loading supplies. Katherine watched him go with a strange sense of loss, already missing his steady presence at her side. The wagon-right, a barrel-chested man named Ferguson, examined her repair with a critical eye. "Temporary fix, but well done," he grudgingly admitted. "Who did this work?" "Mr. Northrup helped, but we did it together," Katherine replied. Ferguson's eyebrows shot up. "You helped a woman." Katherine stiffened. "I'm perfectly capable with tools, Mr. Ferguson." The man's eyes narrowed, noticing for the first time how she held her pencil in her left hand as she made notes about the repairs needed. His expression changed, becoming guarded. "It'll take 2 days for a proper replacement." "Cash in advance." The price he quoted was exorbitant, nearly double what Katherine had expected. She opened her mouth to protest, but caught the stubborn set of his jaw and thought better of it. This was the only wagon ride in town. She had little choice. "Fine," she said tersely, counting out the money. Similar encounters followed at the general store and the boarding house. As soon as people noticed her left-handedness, prices mysteriously increased, service became reluctant, and whispers followed in her wake. By late afternoon, Katherine was exhausted from the constant battle against prejudice. She was sitting on a bench outside the general store, waiting for Aaron and fighting back tears of frustration, when the door of the mercantile opened and 3 women emerged, their hushed conversation carrying clearly in the still air. "Cursed, that's what I heard. Left-handed and traveling alone, nothing but trouble. Mrs. Holloway says she refused to take her in, said she wouldn't risk bringing misfortune on her other boarders. Well, I heard from Ferguson that they abruptly fell silent upon noticing Katherine, their expressions a mixture of embarrassment and fear. One woman made a quick sign against evil, barely concealed by her shawl. Katherine rose, dignity the only shield she had left. Good afternoon, ladies, she said coldly, walking away with her head held high despite the burning humiliation that threatened to choke her. She had nearly reached the end of the street when Aaron found her, his expression concerned. "Katherine, what happened?" "I went to the store and they said you'd left." The genuine worry in his voice nearly undid her. "No one wants me here," she said, hating the tremor in her voice. "The wagon ride will take 2 days for repairs, but there's nowhere for me to stay. Mrs. Holloway refused me a room." Aaron's eyes darkened with anger. Why in tarnation would she do that? Katherine held up her left hand bitterly. "This is why, it's always been why. They think I'm cursed, touched by the devil. Left-handed, left behind, left alone. It's been this way my entire life." Understanding dawned on Aaron's face. "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard." "Is it?" Katherine laughed harshly. "My own mother made me wear a wooden brace until my fingers bled. My father's business failed because customers stopped coming when they discovered his daughter was afflicted. The wagon train left me to die in the desert rather than travel with me. And now, this town won't even let me stay one night." Aaron was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, to Katherine's surprise, he took her left hand in his, examining it carefully before meeting her eyes. "These are the hands of a hard worker, a skilled craftswoman, a survivor," he said softly. "There's no curse here, Katherine, just people too ignorant to see what's right in front of them." Something in his gentle tone broke through the walls she'd built around her heart. A sob escaped before she could stop it, and Aaron did the unthinkable. He pulled her into his arms, right there on the main street of Rattlesnake Gulch, offering comfort without hesitation. "I have a small cabin about 3 miles outside town," he said when she'd composed herself. "It's not much, but you're welcome to stay there while your wagon's being repaired." Katherine pulled back, searching his face for ulterior motives. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Aaron's smile was warm and genuine. "I know enough. I know you worked all night to fix that wagon without complaint. I know you can shoot, ride, and tie knots better than most men I've met. I know you're heading to Santa Fe to start a new life all on your own, which takes more courage than most folks will ever have." His voice softened. "And I know that anyone who thinks you're cursed is a damn fool." That night, Katherine found herself in Aaron's simple one-room cabin, eating a surprisingly tasty stew he'd prepared while he told her about his plans to expand his small ranch, once he returned from his trip to Rattlesnake Gulch. "Just needed to sign some papers with the land office and pick up supplies," he explained. "Been saving for 3 years to buy the adjacent property. Previous owner finally agreed to sell." "It sounds wonderful," Katherine said, genuinely happy for him. "You must be proud of what you've built." Aaron looked around the cabin with satisfaction. "It's a start. Got 15 head of cattle, 2 good horses, and enough land for a decent-sized herd eventually." He hesitated. "Gets lonely sometimes, though." The admission hung in the air between them, charged with possibility. Katherine busied herself with her stew, unsure how to respond. "What about your land near Santa Fe?" Aaron asked after a moment. "You said it was from an uncle." "My mother's brother," Katherine confirmed. "I never met him, but he left me 20 acres in his will." The lawyer's letter said there's a small house and a well, not much else. 20 acres is a good start, Aaron said encouragingly. What will you grow? Their conversation continued late into the night, moving from practical farming advice to shared stories of their childhoods, dreams for the future, and everything in between. Katherine found herself opening up more than she had with anyone in years, drawn to Aaron's straightforward honesty and the way he truly listened when she spoke. When it came time to sleep, Aaron insisted on taking the floor, giving Katherine his bed despite her protests. As she lay beneath his quilt, surrounded by his scent, she felt safer than she had in a very long time. The next 2 days passed in a similar fashion. They rode into town together to check on the wagon repairs and purchase supplies, with Aaron's presence seemingly deterring the worst of the townsfolk's behavior. Katherine noticed how respected he was. Ferguson, the wagonwright, became almost cordial in his presence, and the general store owner suddenly remembered he could offer a discount on bulk purchases. On the evening before her departure, Aaron prepared a special dinner, complete with a bottle of wine he'd been saving for a celebration. To new beginnings, he toasted, his eyes never leaving hers as they clinked glasses. And to unexpected friendships, Katherine added softly. After dinner, they sat on the small porch, watching the stars emerge in the vast New Mexico sky. The night was cool but not cold, the silence between them comfortable rather than awkward. "I've been thinking," Aaron said finally, his voice thoughtful. "Your land in Santa Fe, you said it's undeveloped except for the house and well," Katherine nodded. "According to the lawyer's letter, yes. Why? Starting a farm from scratch is hard work, especially alone." He turned to face her, his expression earnest. "I could help. I've got experience, tools, even some seed I could spare." "You'd come all the way to Santa Fe to help me?" Katherine asked, surprised. Aaron took a deep breath. "Actually, I was thinking I might come with you tomorrow if you'd allow it." Katherine's heart beat faster at the suggestion. "What about your ranch? Your expansion plans?" "The land will still be here," he said simply. "But I've never met anyone like you, Katherine. Someone who faces the world's cruelty with such dignity and strength. Someone who works through the night to fix a broken axle rather than accepting defeat." He reached for her left hand, holding it gently between both of his. "I'd like to know you better if you'll let me." Katherine stared at their joined hands, emotion tightening her throat. "People will talk," she whispered. "They always do. I don't want to bring misfortune on you." Aaron's laugh was gentle but firm. "Katherine Zellner, there is no curse. There never was. The only misfortune would be letting you ride away tomorrow without telling you how I feel." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "They called you cursed for being left, but the truth is, you're my miracle. Finding you broken down in the desert was the luckiest day of my life." The sincerity in his eyes undid her. When his lips met hers, Katherine felt a lifetime of fear and rejection begin to melt away, replaced by something warm and hopeful and new. The journey to Santa Fe took them nearly 2 weeks, during which Katherine discovered that traveling with Aaron was nothing like her previous experiences on the trail. He treated her as an equal partner, valuing her opinions and skills without question. They faced the usual challenges of frontier travel: a sudden thunderstorm, a river crossing gone awry, even a brief encounter with a small band of raiders who quickly thought better of attacking when they saw Aaron's steady aim and Katherine's determined stance beside him. Through it all, their connection deepened. Aaron's gentle humor and unwavering support allowed Katherine to lower her guard, while her intelligence and resilience earned his growing admiration. By the time they reached the outskirts of Santa Fe, what had begun as attraction had blossomed into something neither could deny. Katherine's inherited property proved to be better than described: 20 acres of promising land, with a small but sturdy 2-room adobe house, a reliable well, and even a few fruit trees that had somehow survived neglect. The first time she unlocked the door and stepped inside, Aaron hanging back to give her a moment, Katherine felt an overwhelming sense of rightness. This was her place, her beginning. She turned to find Aaron watching her with a tender expression. "Welcome home," he said simply. Over the following months, they worked side by side to transform the neglected property into a working farm. Aaron's knowledge of the territory proved invaluable as they planted crops suited to the New Mexico climate, built fences, and repaired the house. Katherine's skill with tools and natural eye for design turned the simple adobe structure into a comfortable home. Their nearest neighbors, the Ramirez family, lived a mile away and quickly became friends despite initial wariness. Mrs. Ramirez, upon observing Katherine's left-handedness, merely commented that her own grandmother had been the same and had been the most talented weaver in their village. "Some say it is a gift," the older woman told Katherine confidentially, "to see the world differently than others." News of Aaron's presence at Katherine's farm inevitably generated gossip in Santa Fe, but the couple found they cared less and less what others thought. Their life together developed its own rhythm: hard work during the day, quiet evenings planning for the future, nights spent in each other's arms. On a crisp autumn evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in shades of pink and gold, Aaron took Katherine's left hand and placed a small object in her palm. "I've been carrying this for weeks, waiting for the right moment," he admitted as she stared at the simple gold band. "I know it's not fancy, but my mother always said it's the promise that matters, not the price of the ring." Katherine looked from the ring to Aaron's face, her eyes shining. "Are you asking me to marry you, Aaron Northrup?" "I'm asking you to build a life with me," he replied, suddenly serious. "To face whatever comes our way, good or bad, together. I'm asking you to trust that what others call a curse, I see as the most precious blessing I could imagine." He cupped her face gently. "I love you, Katherine, every part of you exactly as you are." Katherine closed her fingers around the ring, her heart so full she could barely speak. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes to all of it." They were married 2 weeks later in Santa Fe's small church, with the Ramirez family and a few new friends in attendance. The ceremony was simple but meaningful, and if the preacher raised an eyebrow when Katherine signed the marriage register with her left hand, Aaron's proud smile never faltered. As they rode back to their farm that evening, now husband and wife, Katherine thought about the long journey that had brought her to this moment: the pain and rejection, the abandonment in the desert, and the unexpected rescue that had changed everything. "What are you thinking about?" Aaron asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. Katherine smiled, squeezing his hand. "That sometimes being left behind is the only way to find where you truly belong." Aaron brought her hand to his lips, kissing the wedding band that now encircled her finger. "And sometimes what looks like bad luck turns out to be the greatest blessing of all." 5 years later, the Northrup farm had grown into one of the most prosperous in the area. They'd expanded to 30 acres, with thriving crops and a small but healthy herd of cattle. The adobe house had been enlarged to accommodate their growing family: 4-year-old Daniel and 2-year-old Sarah, both of whom showed signs of inheriting their mother's left-handedness. Far from hiding this trait, Katherine taught them to be proud of their uniqueness, while Aaron delighted in watching his children develop their own special talents. Daniel already showed remarkable artistic ability, while little Sarah could calm even the most skittish animals with her gentle touch. On the anniversary of their first meeting, Aaron surprised Katherine with a hand-carved sign for the entrance to their property. "Miracle Farm," it read in bold, beautiful letters. "Because that's what you are," he told her as they stood together, watching their children play in the yard. "My miracle found in the desert when I least expected it." Katherine leaned against her husband, filled with gratitude for the man who had seen past superstition to the person beneath. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked, "changing your plans to follow me here?" Aaron's arm tightened around her waist. "Not for a single moment. Everything I ever wanted I found right here." He kissed her tenderly. with the left-handed woman who stole my heart and gave me a miracle in return. As the sun set over their land, painting the adobe walls golden in the fading light, Katherine knew with absolute certainty that what others had called a curse had led her to the greatest blessing of all, a love strong enough to overcome superstition, resilient enough to weather hardship, and true enough to last a lifetime.